We still have 3 presentations by students.
Hello, I'm going to start my presentation entitled Transdisciplinary Research for Building a System Toward Global Peace. I try to present quickly. I'm Sodoro Sada, a 5th grade student in a 5-year PhD course in GSAIS. Before presenting my research, I introduced this well-known model of transdisciplinarity by John et al., who published it in 2012. This model is composed of 2 flows. One is societal and the other is scientific. And the center part of the model illustrates 3 steps of the transdisciplinary study: problem transformation, interdisciplinary integration, and transdisciplinary integration. To do transdisciplinary research, we have to transform societal and scientific problems into a boundary object between disciplines, namely a common research object. Then interdisciplinary research produces new knowledge, and its contribution to societal and scientific progress was evaluated. I would like to briefly introduce my research along these 3 steps. Because of only 10 minutes presentation, I skip the details. So let's start with the first step. I would say a controllable or and sustainable system requires a feedback loop. For example, this is a simple system of a thermostat. It controls the temperature of the air in a room or water by checking the temperature at that time, at the moment. And that kind of loop structure, called a feedback loop, maintains an ideal condition. However, in terms of building or keeping the global peace, feedback loops within the system of our society are still not enough. Although there are some pages published on the internet observing conflict and protest events, there is not enough information about positive acts like economic integration and international cooperation to avoid conflicts. This figure represents a simplified model of our society. Based on ideal conditions, citizens elect the government in the country, and this process is indirect in Japan. Then the government translates its policies into action. It affects the economy and diplomacy, which affect the economic integration and multilateral diplomacy. But the media tend to report situations within the country and criticize unsatisfactory policies. This structure makes citizens inclined to focus on issues within the country and probably promotes nationalism. Based on these assumptions, I aim to build feedback loops for sustainable, cooperative, and developed world. This is the definition of global peace in this study. The feedback needs to demonstrate complicated international situations as an easy way to understand them for the public. In this case, I plan to develop indices of economic integration and multilateral diplomacy. I thought this is also important for tackling global issues. And then this is my research concept figure. You can see 60 figures, including this in Miro. I think most participants have visited Miro already. Firstly, I introduced 2 interdisciplinary studies that define the economic integration index and diplomatic centrality. Economic integration analysis was conducted with Ikeda, professor of physics at GSAIS. We applied methods from 3 domains: macroeconomics, network science, and fluid dynamics. We detected 2 communities, Europe and Asia Pacific, from global data and quantified the extent of economic integration in the communities. The results showed European index became unstable after the economic crisis in 2009. On the other hand, Asia Pacific's index had stably developed. International cooperation analysis was conducted with an economist, political scientist, and physicist. We applied methods from 3 domains: international relations, network science, and applied physics. We compared national contributions to regional cooperation from regional data, ASEAN +6 and the United States, and identified top contributors, Japan, China, and the ASEAN member states. We also quantified the extent of regional cooperation. There is a cooperative trend in the Asia-Pacific region after the economic crisis. In economic integration analysis, macroeconomics method transformed the international economy into a table called the input-output table, which was proposed by Leontief, who won the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences in 1973. Then network science method transformed the table into a network and identify the communities from the network. And our fluid dynamics method, Helmholtz-Hodge decomposition, extracted circulated value within the network in communities. We use the circular components as a numerator of the economic integration index. So one of the main figures is at the bottom. This represents two regional communities and several European sectoral communities for 50 years. The second main figure is this. We could compare the economic integration of the two regions. In international cooperation analysis, some groups of international relations developed event data from news text by using an event classification system. We used the classified event data, which are assigned a numerical conflict cooperation scale. Then network science method transformed the numerical scale between countries of the data to monthly political distance networks and calculated diplomatic centralities. And we considered the monthly centrality of each country as a kind of wave. Then we applied the mathematical transform, Fourier and Hilbert transform to the waves to calculate the phase of the waves. Consequently, we obtained an order parameter as the extent of the regional cooperation from phases of all countries. This is one of the main results. Before 1994, the top contributors were Japan, Australia, and ASEAN. From 1994 to 2012, Japan and China occupied the top ranks. After 2012, ASEAN joined the top contributors again. We could compare the countries like this. This is the second main result. For 36 years, we identified the clusters, Australia and New Zealand, South Korea, Japan, China, ASEAN, and the US, and unique India. This is the third main result. We detected periods when most of the countries had conducted their diplomacy cooperatively. And this is my research concept figure again. I introduced two interdisciplinary studies. Economic integration analysis identify the contributions of the Asia-Pacific region from global data. Then international cooperation analysis identify the contribution of Japan in the Asia-Pacific region. Based on these results, next I focused on a situation of cooperation and social implementation in Japan. So next I present an early stage of application of the studies. So this is the third step of transdisciplinary research. I'm conducting a project with Kansai Electric Power Corporation to make a roadmap for international expansion. This corporation is the first Japanese electric corporation to conduct an overseas power plant project in 1998. I'm studying the case of Japanese enterprises in the energy sector to this project. The background of this project is the high contributions of the Asia-Pacific and natural resources sectors in terms of economic integration, and of Japan in terms of regional cooperation. Moreover, energy resources and dependence on them made problematic by recent climate issues and the Russian invasion are also the backdrop. I'm also planning a social implementation of diplomatic indices, introduced and used my paper with an NPO that works on electoral issues using digital technology. I aim to propose a new, easy way to understand international relations. I plan to develop a web page for the Japanese to understand international relations using indices and to collaborate with the news media, especially newspaper. This is my last slide, and I summarized the transdisciplinary study. As step one of the transdisciplinary research model, I set boundary objects, proposing quantitative indices as feedback loops in a peace building or keeping system. In step 2, co-authors and I integrated several domains into the analysis. These results were published by PLOS1 and the interdisciplinary physics section of Frontiers in Physics. Then I am now conducting the 2 projects. I can't tell you the detail today because the project is not finished yet. So I hope you will read my future PhD thesis. And this is the end of my presentation. If you are interested in my research, please give me a comment or question on Miro. My figure is in the right bottom space. You can read the published paper without any fee because both of the papers were published by open access journals. So thank you for your attention.
So hello everyone, my name is Shoku Iwasaki, 5th-year student at GSAIS. My supervisor is Karo Sekiyama from GSAIS and Yusuke Mariguchi from Graduate School of Letters, Kyoto University. First of all, let me briefly introduce my research keywords. My main research discipline is developmental psychology. I have been focusing on the relationship between curiosity, cognitive development, and social interactions. And my main research keywords are curiosity, children, cognitive development, and social interactions. Today, I would like to discuss my research motivations, my current research, and my reflection about transdisciplinarity. First of all, I would like to introduce a video. This baby was 8 months old. Right, so do you think he was curious about this white object? Curiosity defined as a desire to know new knowledge and information. And this is motivated to reduce uncertainty. Many scholars now indicated that curiosity is an innate skill. So he might examine whether this white object rolls when he touches it with his curiosity. But as you can see in the video, he could not crawl easily. However, he tried really hard to get information. So then, why did I focus on young children's research and curiosity research? As many of you know, it has been emphasized that the good quality of education for younger children can protect children's life and enhance their future health and well-being. So creating supportive and protective environment at the early life stage is now crucial. So then I wonder what was the quality of educations. Another aspect of my research motivation is children's innate future. Of course, children need to have enriched experience for cognitive development. At the same time, I was also interested in children's unique feature, which was that children are innately curious. So when we face the decision-making situations, do we explore new information instead of using previous reliable information? Children actually like exploring much more than adults. They are active learners. Babies and infants want to know a lot, even though their cognitive and physical development are immature. And this immaturity seems to enable younger children to be spontaneous learners and more flexible thinkers. So, is it beneficial to study children's curiosity mechanism? And what can we learn from children's studies? If curiosity is an innate feature of human beings, what happens when we want to know something? How can we maintain this desire in our lifetime? To answer these questions, we took 2 different research approaches. One is understanding the relationship with cognitive development, and the other is social interactions. Here is a brief introduction of my research outline. Firstly, we investigate the association between curiosity development and cognitive ability, such as intelligence and self-control ability, by conducting experiments. And secondly, we examine the relationship between curiosity development and social interactions with caregivers, peers, and teachers. So now currently I am implementing the project-based research, PBL. I experienced the internship at UNESCO in the first half of this year. And I am now collaborating with them to develop a monitoring tools to improve teachers' interactions quality. Internship provided me the insight how the research can contribute to society. And by reflecting on this experience, I planned the project and currently implementing under university and UNESCO's supervisions. Next, I would like to talk about my attitude toward transdisciplinarity. At first, at the beginning, I was motivated to do research by social issues. So my research began with social issue oriented. My research practice includes the review previous research, set the hypothesis, design the experiment, develop questionnaires, conduct experiments, and write papers. In those activities, I had discussion with field workers, such as teachers and school directors. Of course, I met a lot of caregivers and children. I realized that I always need to keep in mind how my research contributes to society. So through this repeated research cycle, I experienced to go back and forth between doing research and experiencing social interactions again. So now, if I look back on my research life, I realized that many issues were vague at the time, like the picture of the watch on the left of the slide. So by repeating this cycle, all the research matters become much more clear now, even though it is not so perfect. And here's my conclusions. In the research, it seems I just examined this relationship between two specific research objects. However, I started to realize that these objects connect to many other factors in the overall pictures. Throughout the transdisciplinary research, I became more aware to see the issue from not only one perspective, but also from many other different angles. Here are my reflections and questions. I am still not sure, do I need to conduct transdisciplinary research for my PhD dissertations? Is it better after finishing my PhD? Because of the time-consuming issue and the difficulty in reaching the certain research level. But throughout my research experience, I reflect that transdisciplinary approach increased my skills of breaking down problems, help keeping in mind the overall pictures, and impacts on my research attitude. I wish to keep curiosity like a child throughout my lifetime. Thank you very much.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Wenlong Li, the fourth year student. My supervisor is Professor Zhao in GSAIS and also Professor Shimaka and Professor Quarish in the engineering department. So today I would like to talk about historical transportation. I will run this through very quickly. Why I want to do this kind of research? Actually, if we look at the development of the humankind, why we can survive. The very important reason is because that we can communicate with each other in a very efficient way and unify each other. The agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution, its essence is the same. We Based on the advanced technology, we promote the division of the labor and induce a more efficient scale economy. There are many types of communications types, but they are all limited. For example, the geography would separate us apart, but we developed the transportation to narrow that kind of gap. Information technology allow us to communicate each other online. My priority is the transportation. As you can see, I want to find something indicators which can summarize all the characteristics of the transportation method. Here I use accessibility, which I will explain later. The research subject I choose is Asian China is because the available data is relatively large. I always believe that the impact on the long term is only possible be captured based on a long-term study in history. For example, as you can see, in the very beginning of the history, most megacities were located between the agricultural zone and nomadism. And with the development of the transportation, especially in the civilian transportation, some cities along the coast, along the coastline emerges. And until today, almost all the megacities was very close to the sea. And there is another example how the Chinese ancient dynasty's capital changes, the location changes. And as you can see, it's actually moving along the Grand Canal. So this is how the transportation shape our civilization. There are generally three parts of my research. The first one is the construction of the Chinese historical transportation accessibility, and then trying to discover the relationship between the accessibility and the population dynamics and also the social networks. What is the accessibility? Accessibility was the indicator used to indicate the available possibility of one certain places. So it was rely on two factors. The first one is the opportunity distribution, and another one is the travel cost to obtain those kind of opportunity. So as you see in the first equation, the accessibility of the location I was calculated by the sum of the all possible opportunity obtained from all places and weighted by the cost it takes time. In the ancient times, actually, the economic opportunity was proportional to its population. So here we use the population directly to represent the opportunity. And here are some previous studies that I adopted directly for the cost function. I will not explain here. And here are some dynasties or periods as I'm focusing. The reason I choose them is because there are significant transportation revolution happened at that time. The first national road system was built around 2,000 years ago in China and in Han Dynasty, and then the Grand Canal was finished around 1,000 years ago in Tang Dynasty, and then the Song Dynasty and the Ming Dynasty. And as you can see, those three road networks that I used to calculate the transportation cost, etc. And I divide the whole subject, the Chinese proper area, into 1,700 points to unify the calculation and to represent the area, the square area with the length of the 50 kilometers. This kind of division is relatively close to the county level area. And this is the final transportation networks that I built. And then I choose 4 representing years due to the available population data. So now we have the road networks, and then we have the population. We have the node network. I also consider the influence of the geography, for example, the slope. And then based on that, I found some historical documents about the actually speed that about the historical vehicles. So based on that, I get the accessibility results for those time period. As you can see, it was very clear that there is an economic center shift from the north to the south along the history. This is consistent with the history recommendation. And then next part is based on the accessibility results. I developed a model to describe the relationship between the population dynamics and the transportation accessibility. So as you can see, the population change is equal to the accessibility effects plus the local effects. Local effects was quite directly to linkage to the chaotic events, which is a war or disaster, which would induce directly population loss or something like that. So I grouped the prefectures into different provinces because the province division was based on the major geographical landmarks. And here are some equations that I developed. Maybe you just need to know the concept. You don't need to go through the details. And this is the final results. Generally, the calculated parameter is consistent with the historical documentation, so which means that it's meaningful. This is another thing that I'm doing right now is about the Chinese historical social networks that China have the tradition of the writing history records. Mostly is a biography of the different people. So there are more than, I believe, more than 50,000 people's biography that happened along the year. As you can see, this is the evolving process of the social networks of the historical China in the past thousands of years. So I'm doing the analysis based on the social network and the accessibility and trying to support my assumption that accessibility is the most crucial factor rather than the population for the evolving of the social networks. So this is generally my research content. So as for the contribution of my research, of course, this is interdisciplinary research about the history, transportation, population, and the social network analysis. The first contribution is to contribute to the digital humanities and to the historical studies in a quantitative way. That is, a few researchers do that and made a great foundation for other studies for the accessibility impact to the society, especially for the society afterwards with the introduction of the new transportation method. But there is also limitations because the parameter, because of the lack of data, the parameters still need discussing. We need to find more evidence, historical evidence to support the why we choose that parameter. And the evolving process is not continuous. It's just some time period. And also the calculation is relatively rough. So this is generally my research. Thank you for your attention.